In 2017 as a visiting lecturer, and then Jack Whitlock was principal. After a term, I was called to come back the following year for a year as a visiting lecturer. It was during that time that I was made acting vice principal. Little did I know that Jack was pushing me to the principal's seat. Then in 2019, I was made principal. Before that, I talked to Jack and said, Jack, the situation surrounding Dumisani is not held at the moment, and I'm afraid this college will close whilst I am the principal, and that will not paint the black men well, because before there were only people, white men from the Free Church of Scotland. Then he said, no, it will not close. 2nd March 2019, the installation date, I remember it very well. I don't know if my brother David Margaret is in. Yeah, there he is. He was preaching from Joshua 1, and his sermon turned my perspective about Dumisani. The verse that really gave me a rearing to go was verse 5b and c. I quote, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. End of quote. Then I said, okay, it is not about me. It's all about him. He was with my brother Billy Graham at the establishment of the institution. Then came Ronald Christ, then Alistair Wilson, then Jack, then I am next. The same God who was with them is also going to be with me. Unfortunately, I should have come 2 years back, 2022, but it didn't come through. And even last year, it didn't come through because of the visa issues. But I thank God in his providence that this year I had given up and said, I think it is fighting a losing battle. Then the Dumisani board of directors said, you have nothing to lose, just try once more. And fortunately, here I am. And I know it is in God's providence that these ears today are the one meant to hear the Dumisani ministry, and the Lord has a purpose for you who are hearing today with the Dumisani ministry. Now, even if my African accent might betray me, I have one sentence that was held by those who established Dumisani about the existence of Dumisani. It is, Dumisani Theological Institute seeks to equip African church leadership with the Reformed theology. So even if you may not understand whatever I will say henceforth, but you know that this is the reason why Dumisani exists. Equip African church leaders with the Reformed theology. So in a way, it's a way of reaching out to them with the biblical-oriented teaching, which is transformational even in their congregations. I will say, not in an orderly way, but just try to put the puzzle in the way that you can understand what I'm just trying to say here. Dumisani was founded in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, which is the 3rd largest province, having a population of 7,225,784, of which population 85% is regarded as Christians. And these constitute total denominations of 7,408, with the African initiated churches having the largest following. In its establishment in 1979, it was a brainchild of Billy Graham in cooperation with the Planted Church of Free Church in Southern Africa, together with the 2 congregations of the Reformed Church in East London. So they planted this specifically to train the elders who were the preachers in the planted churches to be better preachers therein. So they served this fight for some time. And as time goes on, they discovered the need to extend the training, to also include some other denominations. For your own information, the present day, we only have one from the Free Church in Southern Africa, and none from the Reformed Church. It's also one from the Reformed Church, and the rest are from the African Initiated Church. During his presentation yesterday, I managed to draw a connecting line with their heart in mission and why Dumisani was established. It was centered on the Great Commission that the active verb is making disciples. So this is possible through biblical teaching. Father, make them holy by your truth. Your word is the truth, John 17:17. So through the teaching of Reformed theology, the church, Free Church in Scotland, is able to reach the Eastern Cape of South Africa and beyond with the Reformed theology. In King Williamstown, where Dumisani is established now, the first time I went there, I sat next to somebody who was just going across Dumisani. Then I was asking, do you know where Dumisani is? He said, no, don't know such a college. Said, but the description of where she stays and where Dumisani is, everyone should know Dumisani from that place. But she didn't. Little did I know that they know it as the Bible School of the Free Church of Scotland. If you say Bible School of the Free Church of Scotland, everyone in and around King Williamstown know that it is Dumisani. So this is your college, brothers, and you must be prouder of it. Yesterday, I nearly shed tears of joy when the people I met were telling me that we are praying for you and Dumisani every day. I said, oh, really? I thought I'm in my own corner with this Dumisani. It is really a joy that you are supporting us prayerfully. And I hope from now, because I've put the first, things are also going to be changing in your prayers and beyond. In South Africa, 90% of the pastors therein are without theological training. Dumisani, from its establishment in 1979, and this year was our 45th graduation ceremony, we managed to train pastors from about 60% of the congregations in the Eastern Cape. However, this is only between 3 and 7% of the total pastors in each of the congregations that we are working with. So you can tell the great need for training in the African initiated churches. Also, some mainline churches, they are using untrained pastors as well because they lack training. And Dumisani is now the remaining Reformed churches in the Eastern Cape of Africa after the closure of one which was in Port Elizabeth. So your college, brothers, is having an impact in the Eastern Cape of South Africa, and you must always remember it. The African Initiated Church is a challenge of syncretism under the pretext of continuous honoring of their late parents and relatives. It is only through theological education that this problem can be dealt with effectively. I remember the first time when students would come, some would say, the problem with you is you want to teach us something about your own church. Then I say, no, I don't have a church. Even the lecturers here, none of them has a church. It is the church of God. And whatever we teach you in the class is not from the Bible. Stop us there and then and say, where did you get this from? But if it is from the Bible, we are teaching the heart of God with his church, which you are a leader of. Let me briefly look at the student body. I don't want to say much. I would like you to come and inquire with me for more when I'm seated somewhere or during break time, whatever. Because the joy I have from your prayers is making me have a loss of words. Because I did not think about it, but I know that you have Dumisani at heart. And I thank you for that. So the student body comprises of both males and females, ranging from the age 20 to 60. These include mostly ordained pastors. Some are called apostles, some prophets, bishops, archbishops, and other varied titles according to denominations. Now, the thing that tends to make me happy is the response and the comment we have from those archbishops and bishops. They are requesting that they send more students for training at Dumisani, which is a good thing for the church. But unfortunately, these churches cannot sustain their ministers financially, let alone their study. Dumisani is an institution, we can only give a maximum of 10 bursaries a year. So there is both a mix of joy and sorrow. Joy that the African-initiated churches are seeing the importance of training, and the sorrow that we cannot fund all the possible students who would like to study through us. We have got 3 programs up and running at the moment. We could not take the 4th one because the government is pushing towards having their accredited courses, which is being managed by the Association of African Religious Christian Group. There was a lot of unbiblical teaching in some theological colleges. So in order to curtail that, also the footprint of the state in the state institution, this group of reformed brothers come together and come up with a curriculum that we follow. So they introduced 2 more accredited courses, but we managed only to take 1 because the staff at Dumisani would not be sufficient to take both and the other 2 that we already had. So we have 3 programs, one being a certificate, 12-month certificate with the 12 compulsory courses, which is basically on Reformed doctrine. And each of all our students has to go through that first 1-year course, after which there is an advanced ministry diploma that goes for 2 years. This one, the curriculum we are following, before 2016, we were attached to Northwest University, and we were using Northwest University's curriculum, and the university by then was allowed to accredit another institution. So when this was stopped by the government, we continued with the same curriculum, we did not put it off, so we continue with that for our second program. Then the 3rd program is the one that is accredited, it's a higher certificate in Christian ministry, which is mostly biased towards practical, where students spend most of the time in churches practicing what they would have learned. So these are basically full-time students. The other 2 programs are afternoon or evening programs running from 4 to 7 because we are catering for the working class who also want to study. And these are the ministers who work in order to support their ministries. The catchment area. As time passes by, we are able to train students in the whole of Eastern Cape and beyond. And this also comes up with the challenge of accommodation amongst our students. Dumisani has only 4 student rooms, which can accommodate a maximum of 8, 2 sharing. So that is another challenge that we are facing at the moment. Most of the students could not rent within King Williamstown because the accommodation around college is very expensive. Then the cheaper accommodation is found in the nearby villages. But however, by the time we finish at 7, the public transport will be no more. So they cannot rent beyond that. So join us in prayer for that the Lord will provide a way that we can accommodate more students. We also have some other programs that we are running with partners like Northwest. We are facilitating our students who graduate with us will enroll for the bachelor's in theology and bachelor's honors. And Dumisani faculty with postgraduate qualifications are the facilitators of such program. I am sure my dear friend, Dr. Wilson, were heavily involved in that program. It is still continuing, my friend, although at a low pace because the faculty is heavily loaded. And most of us do not have postgraduate qualifications. So it may end up falling on one-man soldiers, which becomes very challenging by the end of the day. We also have workshops for pastors around and in King Williamstown. We have the African Pastors Conference, which is being facilitated by our good friends. And it normally held for 3 days in a year in October and attracts more than 100 pastors in and around King Williamstown. We also have the children Sunday school teachers workshop twice a year, and it attracts also quite a large number of participants. And we are considering to resume workshops in other parts of King Williamstown when resources permit. They usually had it before. They would travel from one place to another, having workshops with the pastors who could not come to King Williamstown for one reason or the other. Then faculty, we have got full-time faculty, those who volunteer to come and serve because Dumisan is not able to pay the faculty at the moment. And there's part-time faculty. These full-time faculty are being paid by their churches, and we also have the help from the founder, making our stay possible. And we are staying in the houses of the Free Church of Scotland, the full-time staff. And we are grateful to that, for those houses. And they are kept well. They've got reserves to keep the houses in shape. We are very thankful to that. Then part-time faculty is made up of the full-time ministers, reformed ministers in and around King, who come once a week to teach a course. Then visiting ones, they come from South Africa mainly, but we have some from the USA, from some mission organizations, and they come also at their own cost. We only give them where to stay. So this is where we are at the moment. Then the governing board, we have got 6 board members from the Reformed denominations, including the Free Church in Southern Africa, the Reformed Church, and we also have some from the Reformed Evangelical Anglican Church from Port Elizabeth. It is my joy to tell you that the present chairperson, Tinas Jacobs, was involved in the planning for Dumisan together with Billy Graham. It is a joy. That is the present chairperson, and is so supportive. He even told me that when you have got more staff than your houses can accommodate, he has a B&B just next to where I stay. His B&B is open for the people who are serving at Dumisan at no cost. We are grateful to that. Our prayer points. Student bursaries, 1. 2, more volunteer staff in several capacities, faculty and other administrative. Then lastly, student accommodation. I thank you, moderator. Brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Dr. Chipunya, for being here, first of all. You mentioned how you had planned to be here before now, but even the Apostle Paul was delayed. So this time is God's time and it's your time, so it's a pleasure to have you with us. It's also a pleasure for us, and we're thankful to God for the role of the Free Church in establishing Dimizani. We are thankful for the role of Billy Grimm, who's here with us today, and later years, Dr. Alistair Wilson. We continue to have these historical links, and you also mentioned the way in which prayer is important, and I kind of connected with you when you hesitated and you got God's promise that as he was with Moses, so he would be with you, and we are thankful for that. And sometimes the most tangible evidence of that is that God's people are with us, and we want to assure you that we are still with you and that we are still praying for you. And we are so thankful for the work of Reformed teaching and discipleship, for the way in which Dimizani has a growing influence in the church community in South Africa. So thank you for being with us. Be assured that we will continue to pray for you, and we will hear updates of your work in the days and years to come. So thank you very much.
Moderator, Reverend Patrick Jock needs no introduction to you. You have known him as a friend for many years now. He represents the Sudanese Reformed Church. I think we're all aware of the conflict that there currently is in Sudan. I guess some of us more than others. And so I think it is a real pleasure to have him here, and I'm sure that you'll want to invite him to address the Assembly. Thank you.
Reverend Patrick Jock. Patrick, it is a great pleasure to have you with us here. We thought last Friday you weren't going to make it. Somebody decided to cancel your flights, and then we managed to rebook your flights. So in God's providence, you're here. So please address the Assembly and tell us something about the work and the church in Sudan.
Moderator of the General Assembly of Free Church of Scotland, beloved delegate of Reformed Church of Scotland Assembly, grace and peace to you from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ. I was here in 2018, and I had a privilege to visit the moderator in the island of Louis, and I was coming with light clothes. When I landed at the airport, I was almost freezing, sincerely speaking. But Reverend James McKeever, he got out his coat and he wrapped it around me so that I don't die at the island. So you know, our country is very hot, and yours is, we don't even have such. Moderator, from the depths of my heart, I want to congratulate you, and we will remember you in our prayers as you lead the Scottish Church. First, I would like to give thanks to our Heavenly Father who has made it possible for me to come and attend this General Assembly 2024. When I was coming, I had two problems. Getting UK visa, it was so difficult. But by God's grace and your prayers, my passport was kept in the embassy for 3 weeks. And they told me, don't write an email, don't call. And until Friday, last Friday, that is where I got the passport back with the visa. I was, on Friday evening, I was almost writing that I'm not coming because I didn't get visa, and also the issue of ticket. But thank you very much for your prayers that made it possible for me to be here. Secondly, from the depths of my heart, I would like to express my thanks and gratitude for sponsoring my coming to attend the General Assembly of Free Church of Scotland. Without your gracious and generous support, it will be impossible for me to come and attend this assembly. Moderator, this is the first time Sudanese Reformed Church is invited to your General Assembly. Thank you very much. And this is an indication that our relationship is growing. Reformed Church is still a small denomination. So I want to say thank you. Thank you for your generous invitation. Being in your midst, it reminds me that we are not isolated. We are not alone in our difficulties and suffering in Sudan and South Sudan. Christ is with us, and also you are with us as brothers and sisters. Third, I want to bring warm-heartedly greetings from the family of the Sudanese Reformed Church in Sudan and South Sudan. I hope my English is not terrible. Are you getting me? Yes. Good. So remember that Sudan also is a United Kingdom colony, so we had an advantage to learn English. Moderator, our churches in Sudan and South Sudan, every week they pray for you, that the Almighty God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, will continue to empower and preserve the Free Church of Scotland to bear a true testimony to the Scotland people of the United Kingdom. And I'm happy that you have a mission work in London and also in Europe and indeed the whole world. Moderator and beloved delegates of the Assembly, since you invited me 7 years ago, that is 2018, to come and visit some of your congregation, the situation in South Sudan and Sudan has not changed to the better. There are still ongoing civil wars, intercommunal violence, which have resulted in collapse of rule of law, health system, damage to infrastructure, scarcity of critical commodities. Thank you for your generosity. My belly, since I came, is full. In South Sudan, I get only one meal. And also there is sexual and gender-based violence, and there is also full-blown humanitarian crisis. Many families are struggling to put one meal on the table. In South Sudan, it is only Juba, the capital city, where there is relative stability. The rest of the country is unsafe. With global conflict in Ukraine and Gaza, Sudan is an forgotten country. Sudan is a former United Kingdom colony, and I was happy that I could see the Lord Commissioner attending here, and I wish he could be here to hear my plea. I'm wondering why the United Kingdom government is silent about the situation in Sudan. I don't know why. In spite of all these situations, our Heavenly Father is growing the ministry of the Sudanese Reformed Church to advance Reformed faith in Sudan and South Sudan. When I came here last, we had 16 congregations and 3 church plants and 1 Christian school. Today we have 16 churches and 18 church plants. This brings the total number of our congregation to 34. Last time when I was here, there were 16, and now they are 34. Moderator and beloved delegate of the Assembly, in 2018, Free Church of Scotland made 4 pledges. And one, for you to come, at least some of you to come and visit us in South Sudan, to help us start financial fund generating projects, build 10 shops to support pastors and evangelists, and the gospel outreach to our communities. And number 3, to help us rebuild 7 church buildings that were burned and destroyed during the conflict in South Sudan in 2013 and 2016. Assist us with leadership development that we hope will lead to establishment of theological college in South Sudan. However, nothing of the above has materialized. We understand that you also have your own struggles in the church mission in Scotland. Therefore, I would like, on behalf of the Sudanese Reformed family, to appeal to you, moderator, and the General Assembly, if you could kindly reconsider to address some of the Sudanese Reformed Church pressing need that you pledged last. Presbyterianism has spread around the globe because of the great labor and legacy of the Scottish Church. Free Church of Scotland keep the faith, by being a healthy gospel church for Scotland and beyond. To conclude, we need your prayers, and may the good Lord, who has called us to this noble task of the gospel, bless the partnership that we have in his kingdom service. Moderator, on behalf of our federation, we want to invite you to come to Juba in South Sudan. Now I want to show you just some pictures of our work in South Sudan. That tall guy, that white tall guy, is Reverend Philip Based. He is from the Reformed Churches in South Africa, GKSA, and the shorter white guy is from Heritage Reformed Church in North America. So those are people really who visited us. These are the first pastors from the global Reform family who visited us in Sudan. You go to the next slide. That is our first church in Malakal, our first mission church. It was born in 2014. Go next. That is our first decent church. It was built, was a local fundraising, plus an assistant from Heritage Reformed Church in North America. That is our first church in Juba. It was started in 2011. It was burned down in 2013. Go to the next one. That is from inside before the conflict. Next, yeah, that is, we rebuilt that church with local fundraising contribution in 2015. That is our another church. It was burned down, but we were able also to rebuild it in 2020. That is another church in Juba. It was also burned down in 2014, but we were able to rebuild it in 2022. That is one of our church in the IDP camp, internal displaced person, people who have been displaced from their original places because of the conflict. We have 18 of such. They are made of timbers and plastic sheets. But they're really growing. Christ is in those plastic sheets. That is our building, the building of the Synod of the Sudanese Reformed Church in Juba. That is our first school. We started it under a tree in 2017. That is also part of it inside the church that we rebuilt in 2015. That church is a primary school from P1 to P8. It was built with the assistance from Word and Deed. Word and Deed is an organization sponsored by Reformed churches in North America. This is the second school. It was started in 2020 with the assistance from Word and Deed. And that is my family. I have one wife. In Africa, you have to say you have one wife because polygamy is still an issue. I have only one wife and 5 children. Moderator, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's been a pleasure to hear you. As Mr. Martin referred to, I think the first time I met you was when you came off the plane in Stornoway, and you had tears in your eyes. Yeah. Of course, when you come to Lewis, you expect tears of joy. Wow, what's this place like? And here comes Patrick off the plane, but it was tears because of the cold. And he just had never met such cold in his life, so as he referred to himself, James McKeever had to wrap him up to get him under shelter. But it was a privilege to have you in Lewis with us and to share your message with the churches in Lewis and in different parts of the Free Church on the mainland as well. And the church continues to support you because of that. And we are thankful that you're able to do some visitation in this trip as well and refresh churches on what you are doing. It's wonderful to hear news that your church is growing. If you have 16 congregations and 18 church plants, you have more church plants than we do. You know, so it's wonderful to hear that. It's fantastic the way God is working, and to see your churches and the development of the work. It's great to hear that. And even in the the civil kind of war context of, or the civil unrest context of Sudan. It's wonderful the way God is working through you, and we continue to pray with you as you serve the Lord with your church. We would love to visit you, and we have had this discussion before, and at that time we made the decision because of the unrest in Sudan that it was not safe for us to travel, but I'm sure we can revisit that, and it will be great to encourage each other in the Lord as you have encouraged us today. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your stay with us. And I should thank Rhiannon for organising your travel here and for being so great at taking care of you and making sure you've got accommodation and you're here on time. So thank you to Rhiannon as well. Thank you. Okay, fathers and brethren, we're back to the Board of Trustees report. Are we done with questions? We are done with questions. I believe Mr. MacLeod Calamian is going to second the report.
Moderator, I understand we're pressed for time. I'll be brief. Moderator, fathers and brethren, as has been highlighted already today, vision and strategy are an integral part of the board's remit. What has been aired today really reinforces the point that the board at all times aims to be missional in its outlook, acting as a catalyst to help enable healthy growth. The Board of Trustees is a visionary board. It's gospel-orientated and has the greater good of the church it serves as its primary objective. I say this because it really would not be possible without strong and focused leadership from the chair, coupled with a very hard-working and energetic Chief Executive Officer. I'm sure you'll agree with me that both lead by example and work tirelessly to ensure that this board is fulfilling its remit, always in a productive way. Well, having served close to the front line of the Board of Trustees as Vice Chair and at times behind the scenes, I've seen for myself just how committed and diligent Donald and Andrew are. So, be kind to them. Encourage them as you engage with them. They carry a tremendous weight of responsibility on their shoulders. Assure them, if you will, of your prayerful support. Again, I would reinforce the point that Dr. Bob Ackroyd made earlier. We really do owe Donald and Andrew a debt of gratitude for their respective contributions to the wider church. So, can I take this opportunity to encourage you all to pray for the Board of Trustees? It's no light matter being a trustee. It comes with a considerable burden of responsibility and accountability. Finance, treasury, property, and compliance must be taken seriously. These are not matters to be trifled with. So on a personal note, as my time on the Board of Trustees comes to an end, I just want to say that it's been a privilege to serve the church as a member of the board over the past 8 years. As Vice Chair, I've thoroughly enjoyed working alongside Donald and my fellow trustees. I've found my time on the board hugely beneficial and personally rewarding. It's been a positive learning curve throughout. Now, I mention this in conclusion for the encouragement of those of us who may have some reservations about being asked to serve on any of our church boards. can I encourage you to think carefully and prayerfully before declining the opportunity to serve? And I emphasize the word serve. For when we see ourselves as servants, then surely we will be more receptive to being of service to the wider church as well as to the local church we seek to serve. In the final analysis, the prophets, the apostles rather, were first and foremost servants of Jesus Christ. A healthy gospel church is one that fosters service and encourages a culture of proactive serving and servant leadership. I believe, as I bow out, that the Board of Trustees promotes such a culture for its members and for the wider church it seeks to serve. It's been an honour and a privilege to have been a part of this board, and it gives me pleasure to second this report. Thank you.
Fathers and Brethren, we do have 3 addenda and an amendment. And first of these is on the purple page, and perhaps you're wondering where the purple page is, but I can assure you that in the document name, if you have it on your laptop, etc., that it should include the colour in the document name. But there's the purple one, and it's the name of Stephen Allison, and Stephen now will come forward and present this amendment.
Just to say, it says the purple or lilac page in the PDFs that Sharon sent this morning. So it's the PDF versions that tell you the colour we're referring to. I totally accept I'm probably one of the few people in the Assembly who have an interest in what seems like a small deliverance on legal advisors and law agents. But my excuse is I was a solicitor before I entered the ministry, and I think a great deal about some of the legal issues surrounding the Free Church of Scotland. And actually, I've secured a secondary in Ian Watson, who was also from the legal profession before entering ministry. The Free Church of Scotland has over the years been involved in a number of high-profile court cases. Arguably, the 1904 House of Lords decision was one of the most important cases relating to the law of trusts in Scotland. This was replayed in recent years through the Free Church continuing litigation. Questions over what is the constitution of the Free Church of Scotland, does it include the right of continuing protest? And we're perhaps entering a new era where a knowledge of cases relating to the spiritual independence of the Church will be vital. I think back to the Free Cardross cases, which began in 1858 in the early years of the Free Church and tested and established some of the limits between ecclesiastical and secular authorities. These cases were so important that in 1861 they were reported in the media in America and Australia. But beyond the Free Church cases, you have to understand other churches in Scotland and some of the cases involving them, like the Free Presbyterian churches on cases on discipline. The legal history of the church in Scotland is fascinating to me, but it also continues to have a bearing on the church today. A couple of years ago, when we changed the questions and formula, one of our constitutional documents, we had to acquire a legal opinion. Last year, we got a legal opinion relating to the new Conduct Complaints and Discipline Act and judicial review. And over the last year, I've interacted with lawyers regarding judicial review of the church. There are few lawyers in Scotland that understand and grasp the complex history of the Free Church and where it fits into the legal landscape in Scotland. And it's this that fundamentally concerns me about the proposed deliverance within the Board of Trustees report. That by no longer having a stated law agent with knowledge of our history and what is increasingly an obscure area of law, we're exposing ourselves to future risk when the next high-profile and important case comes along which touches on the constitution of the Free Church of Scotland or involves judicial review of the Free Church. For years, our legal agent was a man at Simpson & Marwick who had all the knowledge in his head, but there was no one to pass it on to. Then we had Balfour Manson, but as has been noted in the board's report, some key personnel have moved on, and so we need to get a new law agent. I have no issue with the board pursuing that change. In the past, it looks like they had to come to the General Assembly to approve the law agent, and it seems completely right to me that we delegate that authority to the Board of Trustees rather than have the Assembly decide on law agents. But the deliverance of the Board of Trustees goes beyond that, and that's why I felt compelled to bring this amendment. The Board's deliverance states, the General Assembly grant the Board of Trustees the authority to approve legal advisers and law agents for the Free Church of Scotland, its presbyteries and congregations. The first issue is it purports to give authority to the Board of Trustees over legal advisers and law agents appointed by our presbyteries and our congregations. I don't see any justification for this extension of authority over our independent presbyteries and congregations. Congregations are charities in their own right and are entitled to appoint their own solicitors. The only time where that would be different is where the Board of Trustees are picking up the tab and they could legitimately say they won't pay unless you use a particular solicitor. But that's a power about picking up the tab and about the person paying rather than legislative authority in all cases. The deliverance grants authority to approve law agents and advisers in every case involving our congregations and presbyteries. I'm assuming that was a mistake on the part of the Board of Trustees, and that even if my amendment is not the will of the Assembly, they might off their own back consider deleting its presbyteries and congregations from their deliverance. I raised this with the Board's chairman, but I haven't had a clear answer if that's what they would do. I also have a second issue with the Board's deliverance, though, and it's because I couldn't understand from the deliverance whether the intention is still to have one law agent for the Free Church of Scotland or only to employ particular legal advisers in every individual case. I couldn't get a straight answer on that point. I wasn't able to be told if next year's General Assembly reports in the personnel section will even list a law agent. If the intention is to only appoint law advisers on a case-by-case basis and not to appoint a stated law agent, then I would oppose this for various reasons. And accordingly, I'm bringing the amendment to make clear that the Board must appoint one law agent for the Free Church of Scotland, whilst of course acknowledging the general principle that in any particular case, the Board of Trustees are free to employ a different solicitor. I believe this is the case already, that they have that authority to go to a different solicitor in a particular case, but I wanted to make clear in my amendment that I want the Board to have that power to depart from the stated law agent when it is appropriate. So why am I concerned about us having a single stated law agent, even when sometimes we might depart from that? Well, because as I already mentioned, the law relating to churches in Scotland and the Free Church of Scotland is complex. We need an appropriate solicitor who will build up experience in the Free Church of Scotland. This is essential when a crisis happens, which involves interpretation of our constitutional principles, a judicial review situation arising out of a discipline case, or an issue of the spiritual independence of the Church. These issues are too specialist and too important to not invest in a relationship with one firm who will build up experience in the Free Church of Scotland. Now, of course, in some cases, we may get better value from an alternative solicitor. In some cases, which are general to all organisations, it won't matter. And that's why the Board should have the power in those cases to go somewhere else for things that are more general. But in specialist matters requiring a knowledge of our history, our internal process, and the specialist law, we need the right solicitor, and we need to develop that knowledge and relationship. And secondly, there are issues over how the Free Church of Scotland is identified in any court action. The Free Church of Scotland is an unincorporated association, has no legal personality in its own right. That means, in some of the discipline cases that have gone to the secular courts in the past, such as the Free Church case in 1904, the attempt to identify the Free Church of Scotland on court documents was complex, referred to the General Assembly of the Free Church. The problem is the General Assembly ceases to exist once we rise tomorrow. And did they have to therefore serve the papers on every single member of the General Assembly, with the costs associated with making sure you serve it on everyone? That debate has never properly been sorted out in Scots law, and in the more recent cases involving the Free Church continuing, the problem was solved by the law agent of the Church accepting service on behalf of the Church. That effectively cured any potential defects in the design of the Free Church of Scotland. The papers were served directly on the law agent, who confirmed they were accepting service. So stating our law agents in the accounts allows us to know who to serve papers on and to ensure that attempts to sue individual members of the Assembly are not needed. And so for these reasons, the extension of authority beyond the Central Free Church and also the complexities about the need for a law agent, I'm moving my deliverance. The General Assembly grant the Board of Trustees the authority to appoint a law agent singular, for the Free Church of Scotland, and instruct the Board to report on such appointments to the General Assembly or its Commission. Not for us to decide, but just to report to us. And the General Assembly further declare that in particular cases, the Board of Trustees may instruct alternative legal advisers for the Free Church of Scotland on the basis of suitable experience and the needs identified. So I'm happy to take questions on my amendment. His amendment, yeah, this one.
Any questions for Mr. Allison? No questions.
I'm happy to move, and Ian Watson's happy to second.
Seconder? Do you want to formally second or do you want to speak?
Only if commissioners need examples of why Stephen is bringing this amendment. I don't want to waste time.
I think so, Steve briefly from the front, so you can go. Just be brief, Ian.
I know how to be brief. Moderator, two examples of why I'm seconding Stephen's amendment. First example, where there was a specialised legal matter that required advice. A particular lawyer was recommended to us who didn't have experience of church law, and to be quite honest, he totally made a mess of it. Second example of where it's very useful for a local church to be able to use a local solicitor. When we were buying our first manse, we were required to use a particular Edinburgh solicitor. That solicitor did not understand local conditions, and so various requirements, questions, various almost obstructions were put up, whereas a local solicitor knew all the answers, knew what was going on, time was wasted. So I'm backing Stephen in this because when it comes to particular matters of church law, we need an expert. When it comes to simple local issues, we shouldn't have to use somebody who is beyond the local area. That's why I'm seconding.
We now have an addendum, again in the name of Stephen Allison. It's on the yellow page on this occasion. So, Stephen, do you want to come forward for that?
To some extent, I hope this addendum is maybe less controversial, but I believe it's a matter of important principle. The report states that the board has instigated a review of the current remittance system with a view of bringing proposals for a new system to a future General Assembly. But there's no deliverance attached to this statement that's in the text of the report, which is informative, but it's the deliverances that really matter. If something isn't in the deliverance, it isn't binding on the board. The board's a servant of the Assembly, and I believe in principle the board should seek the Assembly's support for the direction of travel. Of course, the board can commence a review rather than waiting for the Assembly, but then when it comes to the Assembly, they should update us on what's going on and get our approval for the direction of travel. To give an example of this, look at the Assembly Clerk's Office report, where there was updates on areas of practice in the procedure group we'll be working on, what the next steps would be, and the deliverance was clear. Deliverance 4, they instruct the group to consult with all presbyteries and to report to the 2025 General Assembly with a proposal for revision and updated proposal. A clear commitment to consult with presbyteries and report to a future Assembly. Now, you might think this is just theoretical, and you might think I should just trust the board to do what they've said in their report, but I do have a concern about that. Last year, we were told in an email from the Board of Trustees they were forming a group to look at a matter that we'll be discussing later in the supplementary report. A question was asked about it at the Assembly, and they said they were forming a group. But there was no binding deliverance. It now appears no group was formed, and instead the board took a different direction. I think many would have preferred the group to have been formed. Having a deliverance on important matters matters. And in addition to the general principle, I have specific concerns about the review of the remittance system that a clear process in the deliverance would address. First, I should state that actually I have passionately believed that the remittance system needs reform for many years. In a previous life, I was a church treasurer. At my very first General Assembly, I brought an amendment to expose some of the issues in the current remittance system. Donald's predecessor, my session clerk, James Fraser, fought against that amendment and it was not carried. So I'm committed to a proper review of the remittance system, to fair proposals going forward, including looking at how we return to some form of Thomas Chalmers' original principle of that financially stronger churches support financially weaker churches. But procedurally, these reforms must come to the General Assembly. And this concern arose out of a letter that was sent to treasurers on the 17th of November 2023, which purported to change the definition of ordinary income. That was ultimately withdrawn, and I'm grateful the board recognised they couldn't just change the definition. But it created this dubiety about, does something need the General Assembly's approval to change the remittance scheme? I was initially told it wasn't a change, and then the letter was withdrawn. The 2008 Act empowered the finance group to set the levels of fixed allowances and the percentage, as Donald referred to earlier, but not to change the definition of ordinary income. Now, as I say, I was thankful the letter was withdrawn, but I would like clarity and certainty that a future proposal to change the remittance system will come to the General Assembly. That's all this deliverance is seeking to do. I also have been assured that the plan is to consult with presbyteries. Again, I would just put that into the deliverance in the same way as the Assembly Clerk's Office. So my proposed addendum is the General Assembly instruct the Board of Trustees to carry out a review of the current remittance system, to consult with presbyteries on any proposals for a new system, and to bring such proposals to a future General Assembly. I understand this is the intention of the board, so I hope it will not be controversial. I understand what was said in answer to the question about the proposal might be not to change, but if that's the case, you just report that to a future General Assembly, that the proposal is not to change. And actually, the Assembly could say, we actually think you should change. So it still needs reported to a future General Assembly. But I believe ultimately major matters such as the remittance system should be supported by a deliverance, and that's why I'm adding this deliverance seeking to add this deliverance to the board's report. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? No questions. You're moving?
I'm happy to move, and I have a seconder who I've lost. There he is.
Thank you.
Moderator, brethren, I come from a congregation that is a fairly recent addition to the Free Church. We've come from another place. I have to say we are overwhelmed by the welcome that we've received into the Free Church, and nothing has occurred since then for us to change our mind on any matter of serious substance, that is. And what I do like, as has been quoted from over here this morning, we have open and honest conversation. Before we joined, I'm talking about the congregation I belong to, and it's in the Presbytery of Edinburgh and Perth. Before we joined the Free Church 8 years ago, we were assured by both the then Chief Executive Officer and Finance Manager that the mission levy was essentially optional. Any contribution we were able to make to this would be appreciated, but we have since learned from the current Chief Executive Officer that the mission levy is certainly not optional. After 10 years' membership of the Free Church, for us that would be 2026, it will be mandatory. Now, just to put the picture for the members of the Assembly, we have actually been giving away 12% of our general income, split 60% to the Free Church Mission Fund and 40% to supporting other Christian mission work at home and abroad. The current levy system, remittance, assumes a congregation with a traditional setup owning a manse and church and halls. But that is not the case for us. We, among others, who have made this journey, have come into the Free Church with nothing, financially or property-wise, no buildings, no manse, no halls, and for these to have their equivalent, we have to pay rents, which are not inconsiderable. Surely there should be some allowance in the mission levy for a congregation that is supporting a missionary with an existing close relationship. Can I suggest for consideration, if Mr. Allison's amendment is accepted, when for a congregation the upper level is reached at any band in the remission system, instead of a thumping big increase taking us up to the next level, rather a certain percentage be paid as an alternative to more increments between the bands. Concerning legacies, for instance, I have a question here, because probably like everybody else here, I have made a will. I hope it doesn't come into force for many years to come. However, supposing, moderator, a legacy was given to a church and was counted as general income, it could put a congregation into a higher band, leaving a congregation with only a small proportion of the gift for its own use. And even worse, in this kind of scenario, and it is not impossible, a congregation could be put into insolvency. Conclusion, in the words of Mr. Allison's proposed new deliverance, I believe a thorough review, he doesn't have thorough, but that's my word, my addition, a review of the remittance system is now necessary and is overdue. Thank you, moderator.
I think it's fair to say that some of the items that Mr. Webster raised in seconding the addendum need clarification, and perhaps somebody on the board could give clarification on some of these items in responding to the amendment later on. The third paper is the addendum from Reverend Douglas Cranston. It's on the right paper. I'm sure that doesn't mean anything, Douglas. But it's... Thank you.
Moderator, my opening statement was just when I think I was making progress in procedure, you now throw at me coloured agenda papers, so I didn't know the significance. Moderator, thank you. When the Apostle John speaks of love in his epistles, one of the commentators states that John sings his old familiar song. I guess if I had a song that I sang at the General Assembly for now 40 years, it's a song about minister's stipend. Moderator, before I get there, can I first of all take the liberty in regard to the trustees to offer a very grateful thanks to them for the support that they have given to Oban Free Church during Mr. Morrison's sad illness. Owing to the significant distances that supply ministers were travelling and were incurring travelling expenses of well over £100 each Sunday, plus in many cases pulpit supply, this was very quickly going to result in significant expenditure that wasn't budgeted for by the congregation. We wrote to the trustees, and very quickly and generously they agreed that they would meet the supply costs in what was turning into a long-term sickness of the minister, which, as we all know, has sadly resulted in Mr. Morrison's sad death last week. Also, moderator, in addition to that, we have received equally generous unsolicited financial supports from a number of other Free Church congregations. Where the financial support is very welcome and generous, I think along with that, what meant more to us was the fact that it conveyed to us that many, if not all, of our sister churches in the Free Church were remembering that situation in prayer, and we were greatly appreciative of that. Moderator, going back to stipends, which is why I'm here to speak, when stipends are discussed, I frequently hear elders who are ashamed of what ministers are paid. When I speak to ministers in my role as convener of the Presbytery Pastoral Care Team, I am very aware that many of our ministers are experiencing very real and significant financial struggles. I heard only today of one absolutely desperate financial situation of a man's family. Those who are not feeling financial strain, it is often as a result of the fact that their wife's income has been the difference between just about getting by and having some sense of financial security. Along with that, moderator, we have the situation where they are seeking to nurture their families and are only managing that, in some cases, as a result of state allowances. In circumstances where wives do work, it is often means that a very practical reluctance on behalf of their husbands to consider a call from a congregation that is going to result in the minister's wife having to give up her job and that income. And for ministers who are married to professional people, it may prove difficult to get another job in medicine, law, teaching, and numerous other professions and occupations. With the best will in the world, we look at the recruitment of men into our church for full-time ministry, who are the best and the most gifted and are men under conviction of God. It is, however, sometimes very difficult in a real world to see a path to a future where highly paid professional people, or even in circumstances where their people are already carrying significant and substantial financial commitments, can contemplate giving that up for study and enter into a pastoral ministry where they are going to suffer severest financial loss. Moderator, I'm fully aware that ministers in the Free Church do receive benefits. As we've already been pointed out, sometimes these additional benefits are by no means universal. When it comes to a lot of this, moderator, we ministers who live in manses, it's been pointed out that that is a benefit, and it truly is a benefit, although it is only a benefit that is part-time. That temporary benefit finishes on retirement. And while payment in cash is taxed for those who don't live in manses, it is often invested in equity, in a manse that becomes their home when they retire. It's also not pensionable benefit. So again, I wonder if that is indeed a fair comparison. Moderator, as you can see from my deliverance, I want the trustees to be urged to do more. And this should not in any way be to underestimate the considerable challenge nor the considerable desire that they have to do what they have already done. I also believe that thinking of the trustees, they should know that they are supported, endorsed, and encouraged by the Assembly. The Assembly should be prayerfully aware, indeed should be leading and directing the strategy for stipend, and hopefully a strategy that is ambitious, clear, and owned by the whole church. There is surely no reasonable understanding of a healthy gospel church where our ministers are often under financial pressure over and above the normal demands of ministry. Moderator, I have deliberately not put any specific timetable in the deliverance, as I do believe that this work has begun, but I also believe we should urge as strongly as we can that they try to do more, and indeed much more. And also as the Supreme Court of the Church, that we should be fully aware and supportive of what their ambitions are and what their strategy is to get there, and in turn what challenges then need to be laid before God's people in order to support the trustees' effort to reach a stipend which means that the minister, who is the sole earner in the family, is not dependent on state payments to ensure that their work as gospel ministers which is so highly valued, is going to be undermined by cares and concerns over finance. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Douglas. Any questions for Douglas? You're moving in these terms?
I do, Moderator. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Second, are you formally seconding? Do you want to speak? If you don't want to speak, it's fine. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's it. Moved and seconded. Thank you. The last item is an addendum in the name of Ali Sewell. So, Ali, if you come forward and present this.
This is on the kind of baby blue, I believe, if you're looking for that. Moderator, fathers, brethren, I wanted to begin by recording my thanks to the Board of Trustees for all their hard work, their oversight and their responsibility, as we've seen in the report, for various details, pensions, safeguarding, legal compliance, finance, and plenty more, their diligence and skill supporting and caring for the denomination and those of us who minister within it, and also that those details are always kept within that big picture and the healthy gospel church vision. I've been part of a few organizations that have rebranded or adopted new kind of mission statements over the years, but none of them have had such a tangible and engaging effect as the Healthy Gospel Church vision has across our church. And it has that effect because it's a great vision, because it's a biblical vision, but also because people, especially the Board of Trustees heading that up, have put in a lot of hard work to share that vision and to back it up and to encourage people with it. So I'd really like to thank them for that and all the hard work they do. And really, it's in that context of healthy gospel churches that I'd like to bring this addendum regarding the purchase of manses for church plants, as you've got the text of the addendum there, that its importance for the long-term stability and health of the churches that we have already planted and the churches that we wish to and prayerfully seek to continue to plant in the future. I should just say, I've chatted with Donald, who said he's happy to have this addendum in the deliverance, so I'm not going to spend too long going over it, and I appreciate him being open to that. But I do think it's worth just mentioning it to bring it to the wider attention of the church and of the General Assembly. As a denomination, as the General Assembly, we've agreed the ambitious and I think kind of biblical goal of planting 30 churches by 2030. We're kind of halfway through that, and perhaps in terms of churches, we're perhaps halfway through that in time. Things are looking encouraging there. I think that's a great project. If we do seek to have a healthy gospel church for every community in Scotland, that's going to require planting more churches. I hope that when we get to 2030, that's not going to be the end of our church planting efforts, but it will be a set trajectory for us planting more and more. Dr. Wright this morning mentioned about having 300 free churches, so that would be a great goal to have at some point. But that we have that trajectory of seeking to plant more churches. We also have a model of how congregations own their own manses, and I think I'm right in saying that the Board of Trustees has recently reaffirmed its commitment to that model. And again, I can certainly see the wisdom in local churches owning a manse as a base for ministry and ministers and subsequent ministers as well. What we don't currently have as a denomination is anything that's going to link these two different commitments of planting more churches and of those churches owning manses which support that ministry and ensure the ongoing financial health of that congregation long into the future. Currently, really three different things are happening in our church plants. There have been a limited number of plants who have had exceptionally generous external donations, which has enabled them to buy a manse, or essentially the church has had a manse purchased for it from an external contribution. But the very nature of those donations being exceptional means that that probably can't be a reliable, repeatable, or a particularly scalable model. There is, secondly, a number of church planters, I believe, who've been able to purchase or who already own their own homes and have been living in those and getting a housing allowance because of that. I think that does have challenges regarding tax and payment and other things like that. And actually, if church planters being able to purchase their own manses is our plan, we probably need to be more upfront about that as part of our selection criteria for planters. I don't think that should be part of the criteria. Thirdly, I think probably most of our church plants are currently renting property. That's our situation in Haddington. That's been our situation in Haddington for the getting on to 7 years. It will be this coming summer that we've been there. That's meant us paying tens and tens and tens of thousands of pounds out of our church, out of our denomination, and have nothing tangible long-term to show for that. That's also meant for us moving house once when one landlord decided to sell, we had to go somewhere else. I know for other people it's involved moving house much more times than that. It's meant not having that stability as a family and as a ministry base. So those are the kind of current three things that are happening. I think ultimately this is a question of stewardship. We don't want in 2030 to have 30 church plants paying out in total hundreds of thousands of pounds every year from the denomination into the pockets of landlords. As a growing denomination, we want to be good stewards. We want to be growing our assets as well. Property within any organization is always a good investment and a wise investment to have. It was noted earlier, we're looking for suggestions in how to spend an extra £450,000 a year, so I'm happy to throw my hat into the ring for that one, that this might be a good way to use some of that money. I won't take all of it, but just half. But, I do think, this isn't just to look after church planting families or church plants. I think there's real wisdom and stewardship and sense in why this is something that we want to get right, and why I'd really encourage the Board of Trustees to think about this. As it says in the suggested addendum, this isn't all on the Board of Trustees kind of doorstep. I think we want to talk to the Mission Board about this as they take responsibility for church planting and how that's organised. Speak to people who are planting churches already. I think this is something that, is really important. We were told, I was always told, to come with solutions, not problems. Donald said Callum was a man of great solutions earlier on. I appreciate here I've not come with a solution, rather come with a problem, but a situation that I think is an important one for us to deal with, an issue which is only, hopefully, by the grace of God, going to become a bigger issue as we seek to continue planting more churches, to reach more parts of our nation, for every community to have that healthy gospel church, and for those churches to be healthy in terms of finance, as we want them to last long beyond us and continue sharing the good news of Jesus with those around them. So happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Ali. Any questions? Sorry. Okay. Any questions for Ali? No questions. Have you got a seconder? Are you prepared to move first? I'll support him a second. Thank you. So we're coming now to time for speakers. This is a key report at the General Assembly. If we're going to have a healthy gospel church and a healthy church, we need to have a healthy Board of Trustees. And we're here today to help them be that and to encourage them in what they are doing and to give a steer to them also in order to ensure that they continue to be the heartbeat that enables the Centre Church and the wider church to function in a healthy way. I'm reluctant to restrict the timing on this, but you'll appreciate when we look at a programme that we are slipping way behind. It might be ambitious, but I would like to have this finished by 4 p.m. It gives us 38 minutes, but I don't want to restrict the speakers. But what I would like to say is, if you have something to say and somebody else has said it, then please don't take up the Assembly's time. We need to make the best use of the time that we do have. So on that note, I want to call for speakers. Mr. MacLeod. I'm glad there's one brave person who came forward after all that.
Well, thank you very much, Moderator. Friends, I do sit on the Board of Trustees. I am the compliance trustee for the church. So I just want to highlight one point in relation to the compliance handbook that is mentioned within the report. It's there to help. It's not there to hinder. Please make use of it. It's available on the website. It's primarily geared for deacons' courts to look at issues around health and safety, food hygiene if you're running a cafe from the church. Please make use of it and provide feedback to Robert Wilson. There's a number of different people that have contributed to making it available, but it is there very much to help you as congregations. I know it's termed compliance because there are various different pieces of legislation that are out there that we need to comply with, and what we're trying to do is make sure that as congregations, as we seek to be healthy on the outside, that we're also healthy, not because of food, but healthy in terms of what we're doing inside the church, and that we're kept within the legislation that we need to do. Another thing that sits under under compliance is safeguarding training. And I would just like to formally thank, I think he's actually left now, Donald MacLeod, who for a number of years volunteered as our safeguarding training coordinator. Donald did a power of work in developing the training programme, which I hope all of you have attended on Zoom. And I'd just like to record our thanks for that, and thank you to Alistair Macaulay from Back Free Church, who has now stepped up into volunteering as the Safeguarding Training Coordinator. I'd also like to record thanks to the number of volunteers, many of them probably from your own congregations, who give of their time and the skills that they have learnt in their own employment to deliver safeguarding training. The number of people that have received safeguarding training over the past number of years on Zoom is phenomenal as a church. But it couldn't be done without the band of volunteers that are there. So it's just to acknowledge the work, find out who they are within your own congregations. They're actually a very useful resource. And just one final thing. A friend from Tiernan asked the question about could we increase the 1% that we have for spending on camps. I don't want to be controversial, but if we all pay our remittances, that 1% is 1% of a far larger number. So please, if you can, pay your remittances. But there's a lot of work going on, and a lot of work that we need to acknowledge. I get the awkward side of having to look after compliance, but it's all necessary. Thank you.
There are important issues in the amendments and in the addenda, so it would be good to hear the Assembly's view on these as well. Any more speakers? Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Moderator. It's just to pick up on this law agent issue. There is the difference in that the Deliverance is looking to appoint law agents for the church and for the presbyteries and congregations, whereas Stevens is looking to do it for the church. And I wonder whether there could be some sort of common ground there. If the words, if requested or if required, were inserted in terms of the law agents for the church and presbyteries and congregations, because what I'm thinking about is where law agents are appointed, if the business is simply for one area, that's one thing. If there is the potential for wider, if required, then it's a different ask and maybe a different cost. So it's just to give some thought to that when they're considering it. But I certainly would agree with the requirement to have a law agent for the church.
Any other speakers? Mr. MacLeod.
Just very quickly, a number of years ago when the initial discussions with regard to 30 by 30 churches was underway and proposed to the Assembly and it was passed, there was always going to be the time where buildings were going to become a big issue. And I'll freely confess, back in these days, months, years, working through some of these issues, I had no idea where could that money possibly come from. God can provide, but it seems to me with the way that the pension opportunity has given to us, you could potentially be looking at a pot of near £5 million over 10 years to help congregations who've joined from the Church of Scotland, to help church plants, to be able to have bases that they can actually use for worship and for witnessing in their communities. There are various funding agencies and funders who match fund. Imagine match funding, 5 million, you get 10 million. And we then have the opportunity to try and get places for not simply the church plants that have already been established, not simply some for our friends in Church of Scotland congregations that they may currently be in but are looking for a home, but just the opportunity to have bases up and down the country where worship could be done and the witness could be a centre. So it just seems providential that at the very time that we have got so many church plants up and running, we've got congregations joining us who will need buildings, that this opening has arisen. That's not in any way to detract from stipends. It's not in any way to detract from international mission, how we would love to send more money to Dumasani to get student accommodation built, how we'd love to rebuild all these burnt churches in South Sudan. There's so much needs that aren't there. So it's not to detract from that, but could this be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to tie in with the mission that we've been seeking to put into place these past years?
Other speakers? Mr. Smith.
Moderator, fathers and brothers, I just want to comment on two of the addendums. Stephen Allison's regarding the review of the remittance system and Douglas Cranston's addendum about an increase in stipend. And I think it's a great challenge trying to keep everybody happy. It's an impossible task. But it's come up before when the increase of stipend has been spoken about, that this puts additional pressure then on congregations, and especially smaller congregations that are borderline financially viable. And some have commented in the past that if there was to be a significant increase in stipend, this would really affect the potential of the future of some congregations. And if you're going to have a significant stipend increase, I think this would definitely necessitate a review of the remittance system to make congregations assured of a financially viable position. So we can't have one without the other. I'm not saying I'm supporting either or, but just to be aware that if we have one, there certainly has to be another as well.
Thank you. Father Shabbat, I think that is an important point. The more we increase stipend, the more we will force financially marginal congregations to become financially non-viable. It's really worth considering that. Any other speakers? Final call. Mr. MacLeod. MacLeod, it'll probably be the last.
Moderator, fathers and brethren, this is my first time at the Assembly and first time speaking, so I just want to congratulate you on your... I just want to congratulate you on your appointment as moderator. It gives me great pleasure listening to the comments that you've received over the last few days and how people acknowledge your gifts and your service to the church. So that encourages me. I want to speak to the addendum based on minister stipend and just to come at it from a point of view from a son of the manse and the importance of how we look after our ministers. And we spoke yesterday about sabbaticals and rest, but the importance of how we look after our ministers from a point of view of not prayerfully, but financially and supporting their families. Someone mentioned this morning about the most important person is the minister's wife, and to support the minister, I feel that we should be supporting them financially as well. The struggles and the pressure on ministry life, if we want a healthy gospel church, Mr. Cranston mentioned it as well, there's characteristics there for healthy preaching, healthy leadership. And if we're not supporting or if we're adding pressure to the ministers and the work they do, if they have worries or concerns about financial implications of how they support their family, support not only their immediate family, but wider family, how they give service to the church, because at times we're asking them to contribute in travel, which is an expense out of their pocket. Yes, they get it back, but they still need to pay it. So there's additional burdens that are put on the minister, which adds pressure. I feel that we need to make sure that we're acknowledging everything that they do in how they support and give service to the church. It does need a review. I agree from a Treasury point of view, the whole remittance and everything does. What Mr. Smith said goes hand in hand. But we do need to make sure that we are looking after our ministers, both prayerfully but practically through the financial. That's me.
Any other speakers? Donald, it's your chance to respond.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank everyone for their contributions, and I'll just very briefly sum up. I'm conscious that we've a lot of difficult issues to get through before we break up tonight. There's a lot yet to be done. If I just comment very briefly on the questions, very much appreciate the questions everyone asked about cash and energy costs, about staffing, about supporting camps, and stipends. So I'm not really going to dwell anymore on those points. Just being conscious of time. Whilst we're talking about stipends, let's just continue to talk about stipends. So I'm very happy to accept Douglas Cranston's addendum on stipends. Douglas, I think this is very useful. I think I've made it clear that the board is keen that there's the positive direction of travel with stipends, and will happily admit we have just looked at it on a year-to-year basis. So this is helpful. We will come back with this. I will endeavour to come back on this next year. I don't see that it needs to take any longer. And it's also very helpful. A number of speakers have highlighted the relationship
between the remittance system and stipends. You know, we don't live in a vacuum. It's the same amount of money moving around the same system. So it's very useful that people have an understanding of that. So very happy to accept Douglas's addendum. Likewise with Ali Sewell's addendum. Ali and I spoke about this briefly yesterday or Monday, and very happy to take this on and look at this. It will become an increasing issue. You know, we've got 30 by 30. We're well on track for that. Are we going to have 40 by 40, 50 by 40, 60 by 40? I believe Neil Macmillan wants 100 by 40. But so this is something that we need to, clearly something that we need to address. On the amendment on law agents, I don't agree with this, which might surprise you. But if I could just say a few words about that. One is the way, I don't know if Stephen's being generous or playful when you said perhaps we included presbyteries on congregations by accident. No, it wasn't by accident. It was very deliberate. And that the wording does not give the Board of Trustees exclusive right to appoint legal advisors for congregations or presbyteries. We're not interested in having that right. It makes complete sense that a local congregation's got a local issue that can be dealt with by the firm on the high street, that they go to the firm on the high street. Equally, that applies to presbyteries. I'm going to be very careful in talking through this section, not to mention any names of any legal firms, this is we're being live streamed here, or of any legal advice that we've taken. So bear with me as I deal with this. So could deal with this, and there's maybe three parts to this. The first part is emphasising that the Board of Trustees is not looking for exclusive right to appoint law agents. Presbyteries and congregations are free to do as they see fit. But there may be some circumstances, and I was talking earlier about the folly of prophecy, maybe some circumstances which are unforeseen, where we may have to require a certain firm to be used because it has particular expertise. This happened quite recently. I don't want to say any more about it. I think most people in the room will know what I mean when I say this happened quite recently over the past 6 months or so. As regard having a law agent, I have no problem with the Free Church Scotland having a law agent named as this is our law agent. I think that's quite, I don't think it's particularly meaningful. I know Stephen and Ian are both clearly lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. In my professional career, I advised and dealt with most of the large legal firms in Scotland. Dealing with legal firms was one of my areas of professional expertise. So I have advised most of the large legal firms in Scotland and a lot of smaller legal firms too. And it won't be lost on Stephen and Ian, and may not be lost on anyone else in the room, but in days past, we would have a law agent. Firm X may be our law agent, and we would go to Firm X for pretty much everything. But the world has changed, and the professional services world has changed, and it's quite possible that we might need advice on arbitration, charity law, child law, litigation, company law, construction law, contract law, criminal law, employment law, family law, human rights law, immigration law, property law, tax law, technology law, planning law, etc. I mean, there are dozens of specialisms. So the idea that we would have a firm, and in fairness, I don't think Stephen was suggesting we just have a sole firm. We need to go and get the appropriate advice. And clearly, the Board of Trustees is not blind to that point. We're all experienced people in various professional fields. We have a very senior, recently retired lawyer as a board advisor who was a partner in a very significant international law firm. We're not going to be promiscuous about this. If we find a firm that's good with property law or planning law, we're going to use that firm repeatedly. The other factor is lawyers move around. So there are two firms in our recent past who we've had as our law agents for some time. Without the last firm that we used, the person with the expertise moved to another firm. So we have to follow the expertise. We're not going to be promiscuous about this. If we find a good advisor, we're going to stick with them. We're not going to chop and change just for the sake of chopping and changing. The Board of Trustees needs the freedom to appoint who it sees appropriate as we need legal advice. So I hope that's a sufficiently straightforward answer on that one. I think Stephen referred to the one on remittance as a matter of principle. I think he's right. I think it is a matter of principle, but I think I'm going to talk about a different principle. So clearly, the Board of Trustees, as with any other board, is a servant of the General Assembly. And when the General Assembly instructs us to do something, we're jolly well obliged to do it. And Stephen referred to a situation where the Board of Trustees was instructed to do something last year in relation to a supplementary item, which we'll be dealing with shortly, which we didn't do. And we didn't do it because we couldn't do it because we couldn't find any people to do it, which is probably fairly similar to the Christian Values and Education group, which didn't quite happen because there's nobody willing to do it, or the editor of the Monthly Record, or the Parliamentary Liaison Officer. All these things we've been instructed to do, and all these things we haven't done because there's no one to do them. So, of course, you instruct us as a board, we will fulfill that as far as we are able. So I can refute that point. Also, I'm pleased that Stephen brought up the remittance system, because I want to refute the point that Stephen made. The Board of Trustees did not try to make a significant change to the remittance system. In November 23, a letter came out from the Finance Committee, which was perhaps not the most elegantly worded letter. And that letter said, the mission levy has been reduced from 60% to 50% on a trial basis, with congregations welcome to continue to give more than that if they are able. It was always the intention that the mission levy percentage could be reduced over time. However, the trial is dependent on congregations reporting all ordinary operating income accurately and complying in full with the existing remittance system. Now, that letter was misunderstood, and to say it could have been worded better, but it was misunderstood almost exclusively by the Inverness Lochaber and Ross Presbytery, I think one other person. Taking the feedback on that letter, we didn't withdraw the original letter, we clarified the situation. And the letter on the 11th December said, the intention in the original letter had been to communicate that trial reduction in mission levy and request that declared ordinary income is not further reduced by the use of restricted funds. We apologise that the wording of the letter was unclear. So the wording of the original letter maybe was unclear, and I've apologised for that in the past, and I have no problem with apologising for that again. But I want to make a really significant point that the Board of Trustees did not try to make a significant change to the remittance system. And in terms of principle, the principle that I have here, and I've kind of touched on it this morning, and I'm a bit concerned by the direction of traffic with some of the amendments and addendums, not necessarily just on the Board of Trustees, but kind of generally. And I'm not convinced that we're using our time well, really kind of sweating some of the smaller stuff about is a certain organisation in that category or that category for the Ecumenical Relations Committee. You know, they're capable people, we'll sort it out. You know, that's just an example. I don't think that's a good use of time. We've come up with this vision statement. Board of Trustees came up with this vision statement, a healthy gospel church for every community in Scotland. And I think we need to raise the level of our conversation. I think we need to be very careful. Yes, we should challenge. Yes, we need to hold each other to account. But we need to be really careful. I think we need to consider the quality, the depth, the range of expertise that we have on our different boards and committees before just suggesting changes. None of us are going to get it right all the time. We need, I'm not questioning the process. I just think let's just try and use it more effectively, and let's try and raise our conversation. So the principal problem that I have with the remittance addendum is one of micromanagement. The Board of Trustees has been planning to review the remittance system for about 18 months or so. We're doing it now, because now is the right time to do it, because of the change in the pension scheme. So I'm conscious you may not all have that information, but we have that information. And to show the respect that the Board of Trustees has for the Assembly, the pension issue, we don't need to bring before you. The pension trustees have the right to make that decision, and the Board of Trustees have the right to write the cheque for £2 million. I think that would be a very stupid thing for us to do without taking the people with us. Of course we're going to bring that back to you. So I just kind of struggle where there's an issue with trust here. I think the Board of Trustees has vision. I think we're transparent. I think we have good governance. We strive to be exemplary. We will fail. We will fail sometimes. But I just feel that this kind of amendment is unnecessary. So I'm rejecting it on the basis that I think it's unnecessary. It's not going to change anything. We're going to do this with the amendment or not. I just feel it's moving to kind of micromanagement, and I feel it lowers the level of conversation where we need to have our eyes up here, not down here. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald, for your response. That leaves us with two decisions to make. We have the first decision with regard to the appointment of a law agent for the Free Church of Scotland, the purple sheet in the name of Stephen Allison. So will the mover and seconder of this amendment come forward, and the mover and seconder of the Board of Trustees report deliverance? So a show of hands for those in support of the amendment by Reverend Stephen Allison with regard to the Church's law agent. Thank you. Show of hands for those in support of the Board's deliverance. Deliverance carries. The next one is to do with the review of the remittance scheme. It's on the yellow sheet. So that's Mr. Allison and Mr. Webster. Yeah. So a show of hands for those in favour of the addendum with regard to the remittance scheme on the yellow sheet. Those in support of this addendum. Those in support of the Board's deliverance. Deliverance carries. Thank you. Fathers and brethren, the next item on the agenda is the Board of Trustees supplementary report, which we will take in private. I want to suggest one or two things as we move into taking this support. I've consulted with the Principal Clerk on this, and we are suggesting that we use the rest of our time up until 5 o'clock on this supplementary report. I think it's going to take some time and some discussion, so we want to give it that time in the time that we have between now and 5 o'clock. With regard to the process itself, after Donald has presented the issue, we want to have a time of discussion. So we're sure people are clear on what's being discussed, and after the time of discussion, we will then call for motions. In addition to that, I would have a request with regard to standing orders, that they be suspended in this case with regard to conflict of interest. There are members of the Board of Trustees present who were present at the meeting and in the discussion when the Board's proposal was agreed. I think in order to enable open discussion on the matter, that I'm suggesting that the Assembly suspend standing orders with regard to conflict for those who actually sat on the Board. I know that's a departure from what we did last night, but in this case, I think we need open and free discussion, and I do recommend that we suspend standing orders for those who were on the Board and give them the freedom to take part in the discussion. Thank you. I do have another question, and it's with regard to who's to be present. We have present with us Reverend Robin So from the Free Presbyterian Church of the Presbyterian Church of Eastern Australia. Thank you. And in our agreement with the Presbyterian Church of Eastern Australia, we are saying that the representative is free to be part of, is associated with the General Assembly and is free to be part of the discussion, but not having a vote. So my question for you is, do we allow Mr. So to remain in the Assembly for this private session? Thank you. Thank you. And we do have a list of those who are seeking for permission to be present during this discussion. Perhaps you want to go through the list.
The audiovisual team, the Assembly Officer, Andrew Giffen, Ivor Martin, Alistair Macaulay, Sarah Robinson, Simon Kennedy, Neil D.M. MacLeod, Neil Longway, and David Meredith.
Is that agreed? Thank you. So, everyone outside, the number of the commissioners and the number of those who are given permission to stay, that the rest should now leave the meeting, and the live stream should be discontinued at this stage.